Okay, in this video I'm going to show you, if you're lucky, and if the blend file is set up in a particular manner. I don't know exactly what manner, because I don't know Blender that well, or Avastar. If you're lucky, this method is the fastest way to bring in a developer's kit, depending on whether or not how the developer created the kit in the first place. So I can't guarantee that this will work every time under every circumstance, but if it does, it's great. You can bring in an avatar very quickly into MayaStar. Okay, so first thing you're going to do is you're going to activate the female bento, because I'm going to be bringing in a female kit. Okay, and why is that? Okay, I don't know why it was in wireframe mode. When it came in, it shouldn't have. So, okay, so the next thing you need to do is you need to open up Blender, and here's Blender. Just basically, it's opened up, and like I said, this method only works for Avastar. So unless the developer kit comes with a DAE that's been exported out using Avastar, unless that's been done with that, you're going to have to export it out using Avastar. I'd highly recommend everybody get Avastar. It's a wonderful program, even if you don't like Blender, and you're only using Maya. Blender's free. Avastar is very reasonably priced. It's just a little bit more expensive than MayaStar, and it allows you to go back and forth between, to do things with Blender and Avastar or MayaStar much easier. Okay, so we have Blender open. We're going to, I just happen to already have a recent file open. Where is it? Open recent. The Slink female kit Avastar. This is from the Slink kit, developer kit, and this is the female. Okay, so I want to clean this up a little bit. Here's her, please read thing. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I'm just going to come down here, see where these sort of angular marks, I don't know what they call them, dog ears or whatever they call them, in the corner. I'm going to hold down the left mouse button and drag down, and that gets rid of that window. And then there's another one over here. Hold down the left mouse button, drag over to the right, just to make it a little bit cleaner so you can see things a little bit better. Now I want to export out the Hourglass Kit like I did in my last video. Okay, like I brought into MayaStar. Okay, so first I'm going to turn off all of these so that you can't see this. And I'm going to turn this thing. This means you can select it and turn that off. And then I'm going to turn on the Hourglass mesh, and I'm going to make it selectable. And then I'm going to select it. Okay. And that's underneath the avatar. So if it's like that, just come over here to Avatar and expand it by clicking on that to get that. Okay, so now that we have it selected, we're going to go to File, Export, and we're going to use the Collada Avastar DAE. I've been trying to figure out if I can get it to work with the default DAE. Haven't been able to get it to work using a Collada default, the one that comes with Blender, yet. As far as you can export it out and use my other techniques that I've showed you, but they're not as easy as the one that I'm going to show you here in just a second, or that I'm demonstrating in this video. So anyway, so use the Collada Avastar DAE exporter, and we're going to name this. You use the default settings, export with SL rotations. Let's see, I think I used all the default. Yeah, I think I just used the regular default settings. Don't change anything. So you just come in here, and we're going to say for video demo. Okay, so it exported it out. And we're going to come over here, and we're going to import it well, it's actually good that this happened. I did it wrong. And I'll show you why I know I did it wrong. Is if I hide that, notice how these arms look funny. Okay, this is actually good that I did this, so that you'll know if your arms look funny, got this sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, and the breasts look funny, they kind of swooped up. That means you forgot a step, which I did. So, okay, so we're going to start over. New scene. I'm going to activate female bento. Whoops. Activate female bento. And this is, you have to do this before you import the DAE. So it's actually good that I did that. So in order to see this better, I'm going to hide the avatar's body. And I'm going to show a fitted mesh, because this has to deal, a fitted mesh body. Because this has to deal with the collision bone rotations. Okay, so now we're going to go for earlier versions of Maya. I'm going to tear that off. And these are all the stuff in here for earlier versions of Maya. Same thing. And we're going to set skeleton for Maya 2009 and earlier versions. That sets the bone rotations, the collision bones, to 0. Which they're not 0 in Second Life, but the exporter, I believe, for Avastar, exports out the rotations as 0, or at least they import them into Maya as 0. So, so we have to set the skeleton to 0. So you see, you get that same sort of weird thing with the arms. You can't really tell with the breasts. So now what we have to do is we have to make this the bind pose, so that when we import, well, I don't know if you have to make it the bind pose. Let's try. If we were to import it now, what would happen? Okay, if we were to import it now, and then to rotate to SL rotations, ta-da! Now it looks fine. Okay, so you didn't have to create a custom bind pose like I thought you had to. So if we come here to female, we can check out the sliders. We can try body fat, and that looks like it's working just fine. And we can try the different sizes. Maya decides to, Maya does this for me. I think it's because I'm using a Wacom tablet. It doesn't like, sometimes it hangs up when I go to open up menus or click on certain things, and it takes like 30 seconds or 10 seconds to clear, and this is taking a while longer. So I'm going to open up my Firestorm, and I'm going to upload. Come on. There we go. Okay. So you can see if we go to large, medium, small. Thank you, Firestorm. Oh, and for switching between programs, that's the old school. You hold down the Alt key, and then you press down the Tab key, and you can flip back and forth between programs really quickly. Or if you keep hitting the Tab key, you can select other programs. Okay, so I'll just put it like so. I'm going to log in here in just a second. Oops, let me go back to there. Okay, so we have the skeleton. We'll go back to, oh, this is a good thing. When I went to click on go to bind pose, you got an error. So how you fix that is you first, normally by default in the outliner, the DAG only display is turned on. You turn it off. Scroll all the way down to the bottom, because that's the fastest way to get down there, and then scroll up just a bit. It's usually just above where this says, auto resize mesh, and you have two different bind poses. MayaStar really only works best when there's only one bind pose, so you can just delete that second bind pose. That was imported when you imported the mesh. But you can see the meshes still have the skin cluster, so it's still rigged. And you can see, let me move this out of the way. You can see it still goes. Now if we go to bind pose, it goes to the bind pose. Oh, now that's actually good too. I clicked on bind pose and it went to there. So we do need to create a bind pose, because I'm betting you if I import this the way this is now, it'll probably come in all messed up. So let's try. Let's go to export selection, desktop. You can see I've done a lot of testing DAE files, and I've been working with this link mail trying to figure it out. So let's go to, we'll make this test 53. Whoops. No, 53. There we go. There it goes. Taking a little bit longer than usual. Okay, exported. Now if I come in here to Second Life, and I need to come on. Okay, and just for time's sake, I switched to the Slink demo body, and I uploaded the DAE that we just exported out, and as you can see, it's absolutely perfect. Even the shoulders, which we were having a problem before, are perfect. The reason why you're seeing these little poke throughs of the skin and stuff is that the Slink mesh and the demo body and the developer kit mesh are different. They're the same shape, but I don't know, it's kind of hard to see. They have different edge loops, you know, and this was done on purpose, so that all mesh body, or almost all the mesh body developers do this on purpose. They increase the number of vertices in the mesh, and then they reduce it. Decimating it, the mesh is called. What it does is it creates new edge loops in different places, so that if she were to give out the mesh body, you know, if mesh developers were to give out their mesh body as it is in Second Life, the actual body, they would be giving out the body for free, and anybody then could take the body and upload it, or you know, claim it to be theirs, or whatever. So that's why they do this, so that the developer kit doesn't actually have the same exact mesh as the body in world. It's a security thing, and I don't blame them, because like I said, if they were to release it, they would be releasing the actual body, and yeah, they don't want to do that. So that's why you're seeing the poke through in it. But as you can see, as long as you get this flickering all in the same place, if I were to edit the body, it would, because the weights are the same, it would change. It would change the same amount. So anyway, so it did work. Let's go back to Maya. Okay, you don't really want to have this as your bind pose. You know, there's the mesh default, there's the Second Life default shape. That's the shape that's Ruth, or when you create a brand new shape in your inventory, this is the shape you get. You don't want the default. You don't want it to be the pose for the bind pose. You know, it just kind of messes everything up. It just doesn't look right. Even if you were to go back to SL rotations and see, it looks normal now, but when you go to rig your own mesh, you don't want that to be the bind pose. You do not want this to be the bind pose. So you could either have done this before you imported or after. It doesn't matter, I guess. So what you do is you go for earlier versions of, so you go to SL rotations. If you're doing this after you've imported, click on SL rotations, and then you just come down to, let me move this out of the way. You can get, there's two places. I think there's actually three, but I can't remember where the third place is. You go here to Skin Weight Tools, Custom Bind Pose. I'm going to tear it off just so it's right there. And you go Create Bind Pose. Now, this is the bind pose. So now if we come in here and we go SL default shape and we click on bind pose, you notice the arms and the breasts look normal. So now when you rig your mesh clothing, you're rigging it to the proper rotations. So if you click on bind pose and you get a really funky look with the arms, you definitely want to click on SL rotations and then do create bind pose, and then you're done. If you get an error when you click on create bind pose, which happens sometimes, let's see, sometimes this bind pose will get renamed. So if this was named, say bind pose 2, and you click create bind pose, you get an error. See, it says it can't, nothing matches bind pose 1 name. So that's what has happened. Sometimes during the import process, or if you've used multiple bind poses, so when you were creating, say you already had your mesh clothing in the scene, and you had this on when you created that, and you have multiple bind poses, MayaStar does not like having multiple bind poses in the scene. Do not use multiple bind poses. Yes, you can use multiple bind poses, but it breaks different things, such as create bind pose, go to bind pose. It breaks different things. When you click on go to bind pose in the MayaStar menu, there's a mouse grip that automatically selects the pelvis bone and then does go to bind pose. Normally, when you go to bind pose, you have to select a bone, go to skin, go to bind pose. If you don't have a bone selected, say I don't have any bones selected, and go to bind pose. Oh, I'm surprised it actually worked. Normally, it would give you an error. It says, oh, you have to select a bone first. At least in older versions, you used to have to select a bone. Maybe on newer versions, you don't have to. But on my old version of Maya 8.0, you had to select a bone first before it would go into a bind pose. It's probably more, I don't think maybe if you have multiple skeletons in the scene, it might say it needs to know which skeleton to put in the bind pose. But older versions, you always had to select a bone. Learn something new every day. So, okay, but anyway, just don't allow multiple bind poses when you're rigging. Always go to bind pose before you rig. If you want to use a different pose, you can, like say you want to use an A pose, you can rotate the arms to wherever you need them to be. Click. You don't even have to have a bone selected. Doesn't matter if you have a bone selected or not. Create bind pose, and it's given us an error because this is named bind pose 2. There's no bind pose 1. So you just come in here, change that to bind pose 1, create bind pose, and now this arm at 45 degrees is now the bind pose. So if we go to bind pose, okay, you do have to select a bone, I guess. Go to bind pose, it works. It just doesn't, see, that's weird. It used to give an error if you didn't have a bone selected. That's very interesting. Old Maya used to give you an error, said, oh no, you need to select any bone in the skeleton and go to bind pose. So that's interesting, they took that error message out. So now that's the bind pose. Don't like that bind pose, you can Control Z to where it goes back. to horizontal. Again, because I controlled Z, it renamed that back to a 2. Double click. 1. Create bind pose. Now that's the bind pose. And if I were to go skin, go to bind pose, boom, back to the bind pose. So now this mesh is ready to rig. And it doesn't really matter in MayaStar. Normally, I wouldn't have it to where the arms look funny like that, where it looks dipped down. Just to be on the safe side, you want it to look normal. You can rig to stuff in. Well, if you try to rig it like this, it would say, oh, can't. You're not at the correct bind position. At least I don't think it would. Let's try it. Let's just create a sphere. It's pretty far away. Snap to there. Really weird turtleneck or muffler. Or I'm not sure what this is called. A wrap around. Anyway, it's just a sphere. Okay, let's select the. Where is it? Normal bone select. We'll just do the. I'm having a brain freeze. Where is it? Normal bone select. There it is. Normal bone select. Okay. And I'm going to smooth bind. What's already open? Apply. See? Cannot apply because you're not in the bind pose position. Go to bind pose. If you wanted to rig while it's in that position, you create a bind pose by clicking create bind pose. Doesn't matter what you have selected in the scene. MayaStar, normal bone selection, shift key, hold that. Or you could have had that. I could have this selected first and then just went to that. To normal bone select, apply, and now it's rigged. Go to bind pose. Well, see, it is in the bind pose. Mesh default is what it would look in Second Life. So if you want to see what it would look in Second Life, that's what it would look in Second Life. It would deform slightly when you're in the mesh default. But in Second Life, it would look exactly like this. Exactly like this. There are slider settings in Second Life that can get pretty close to, God, I'm itchy today. There are slider settings that get close to the mesh default. The mesh default just means that the skeleton is in the same positions as defined in the avatar _ skeleton XML file. That's in every viewer. All the third-party viewers use the same XML file. It defines the Second Life skeleton. And so there are slider settings that can get you pretty close to the default. It can never get you quite to the default settings because some of the true default settings are fractions. They're not whole numbers. And you can't input fractions into your appearance editor. So anyway, going into way too much detail. So anyway, so you can rig stuff to the default setting shape. That's Earth shape if you want to, or any other custom shape. You can rig to when it's in the female, and so that it fits just the female. Let's take this and let's detach the skin. So now it's a sphere again. If I made that the bind pose by clicking here, and then went to normal bone select, or even collision bone select. Let's do collision bone select. Okay, now I have the normal bones in the collision bones selected, but doesn't have any of the new bento bones selected. So let's unselect everything. Let's select. I'm just going to select that first. You don't have to have that selected first. Then I'm going to go here, collision bone select. I could have just selected just the neck bone and maybe the chest bone. Let's do that. Select just those two. Shift select here. Let me first click here. Now this is the custom bind pose. That's the bind pose now. So if we went default mesh, bind pose, that's the bind pose now. So if I selected that, control, selected the chest, control, selected the neck bones, and then went smooth bind and applied. Now when you wore the large female standard size, the sphere would be perfectly round. If we went to the second leg default shape, see it's slightly, it's hard to see, but you can see it's slightly wider than taller. And now these different shapes, it would look exactly like that. So you don't have to rig to this and make your clothes to fit. If you have a particular shape that you like making your clothes to, yeah, you can do that with MayaStar. And then when you go to export this out, if you were wearing the default shape, it would look like that. If you were, and then to make it a perfect sphere, you'd wear this shape in second leg. So MayaStar doesn't care what shape you rig to. You know, let's see. Okay, so anyway, and you notice I only rigged to 2 bones. Again, I made a video talking about you used to have to add all the normal bones to the skin cluster. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just rig to the bones that you want to rig to. Makes weight painting a lot easier. If you're only having to deal with 2 bones. You know, I could come here to skin weights, paint skin weights tool, and now I only have 2 bones to paint weight to worry about. You know, if I wanted to, you know. So, you know, if I don't know what would happen if you. Anyway, I'm starting to get that's my ADD. My attention deficit. I'm like, okay, now what if I now copy the skin weights from there to there? I think it will only copy the skin weights for those 2 bones. Let's find out. Copy skin weights. I'm just using the default settings. Copy. And now if I were to go like that, and if we were to go MayaStar skin weights tool, paint skin weights. Yeah, it only does those 2. But you can see it's actually the skin weights are different. It used to be the skin weights are considerably different. If you remember before, that it was a real sort of smooth gradient between the 2. And so now if we were to come in here and do the head size. Oh no, it was the neck. Where is the neck? I think it's under torso. Neck thickness. Torso muscles doesn't. No, it doesn't affect that. It only affects. It's only being affected by the M chest bone. So I'm trying to remember what sliders affect the chest bone. This bone. does or not. Yeah, body fat does. So default shape, body fat. Oh, wrong one. Wrong one. Body fat. So I just made a fitting mesh, you know, but like stuff like the torso muscles doesn't affect it. This is the chest bone down here that you can see. It affects it in that the torso muscles appear to, oh, it doesn't show the scale for that because I have the other thing selected. It moves the bone, but I don't think it changes the scales on the bone. But anyway, so if you wanted all the bones in this area to affect your, whatever this thing is, turtleneck, I don't know what to call it, you would have to have rigged your sphere to other bones in this area, fitting mesh bones to this area. But again, you only have to worry about these to paint weight instead of having a long list. Okay, and just for giggles, I'm going to export this out. Export selection, test sphere. Muffler. Okay, and let's export that out. And I'm going to pause the video and import it just so it saves time. Okay, so there's the SL default shape, and then oh, hold on. Okay, so yeah, so there's the SL default shape, and in here I have it in the T-pose, and there's the default shape. Ruth in second line. You can see it has this little sticking out. So, yeah. So yeah, so you can rig to other body positions. I always think it's preferable to rig to the mesh default setting. You know, I always prefer to rig to this one. You can rig to the others if you want to. I just prefer the mesh default. That way I know there's nothing weird going to go on, or chances are 0 of anything going weird on. Whatever you see here is what, when you rig it to like this, is what you're going to see when you see it there. I mean, it shouldn't make any difference. I've done lots of tests. It doesn't appear to make any difference if you rig to different positions, just as long as you create a bind pose for that position before you start rigging. But yeah, so yes, it's been a very long video that was supposed to be showing you very quickly how to get a mesh body kit into MayaStar. So my ADD tends to make these videos a lot longer than they need to be. So have a great day, and we'll see you soon.